In this episode, I speak to John Lamerton. Real pleasure to speak to John. I've been a big fan of his since I started my own entrepreneurial journey. Really grateful to John for spending some time with me discussing all elements of his journey.
I wrote about this in my first book, Big Ideas for Small Businesses. I wrote down this job description, which was to do what I want, when I want, where I want, how I want, if I want. And when I wrote that down, I realised that I wasn't doing what I wanted. I was doing what everyone else wanted.
Thanks so much for watching Get a Shift On. Please do like and share. And if you're thinking about a career change, have a watch, have a listen, and do get in touch. I'd be more than happy to help and see what I can do to help you. Enjoy the episode. So let's get cracking then. So we'll start right at the beginning. Obviously, I know a bit about you, but can you give me, please, an overview of how you got to where you are today? What was your original career? What was the driving force to kind of make that change? And how are we where we are today?
Okay. So I'll take you back to my school days. And 14, 15, the careers advisor comes into school and they do this aptitude test. Do you prefer this or this? Scale of 1 to 10, would you be more this? And they put it into this computer, and the computer churned out that I should either be a judge, a bank manager, or work in marketing. And I thought, marketing sounds like really good. I like the sound of that. So I went to my teacher and said, I'm going to go into marketing. You can't do that. What do you mean? We don't do marketing in Plymouth. You'll have to move to London if you want to do marketing. Right? So no one does marketing in Plymouth. Nope. You have to move to London. Sorry. Okay. So I then thought, bank manager. Okay, let's do that. Let's get into a bank. Somehow that morphed into any office job. And then the plan was that I was going to do my GCSEs. I was going to take a summer job, and then I was going to go and do business studies, A-levels, off to university, then head into the bank. And I did my summer job at the local job centre. And my role in the job centre was putting the jobs up on the board. The kids of today just won't know what any of these words mean, will they? So we used to print off, just literally type it into a computer, print it off, stick it on a wall for someone to come along and go, oh, look, there's a company who wants a labourer. This person wants a secretary. This person wants a chartered surveyor. And as I was printing off these jobs, I would read them. And I would go, that looks like a nice job. I could do that one. Experience necessary. Experience essential. And I was chatting to the guys in the job centre. Said, where's all the jobs that say you need a university degree? We don't get many of those. Most of the jobs we need, most of the employers actually want experience. They want people who've actually done the job, not who've got a qualification. So I thought, why am I going to school, getting these university qualifications, getting thousands of pounds worth of debt, when that's not what the employers want? So I actually ended up staying at the job centre and had a very tough conversation with my parents, because the plan was that I was going to go to university. I was going to be the first in my family to go to uni. I was going to make my parents very, very proud. And I was then going to get a prestigious job. And instead, I started a YTS apprenticeship at the local job centre where I would earn £29.50 a week. And yeah, my parents were not too happy with that. But ultimately, I think 9 months I lasted in that job before another vacancy came in on my desk, which was a civil service role, which was paying, I don't know, £10,000 a year. And I ended up getting that job because of the experience I had working in the job centre. I was 17 at the time, and this was what they call a tier 2 civil service job. So I was working alongside 40-year-olds. And suddenly I was this 17-year-old kid propelled up the ladder of the civil service. So great. All of a sudden, mum and dad are happy now because I'm in the civil service. I've got a nice, safe, secure job for life. I've got brilliant promotion prospects. I've got a really good pension. That's all that matters. Apart from the fact I absolutely hated that job, with a passion. I would I would spend my weekends, this was about the time the National Lottery came in, and I would spend my weekends playing competitions on the internet and playing the lottery and trying to do anything possible to not have to go to work on Monday morning. And it was just such a dull job. It was boring. It was the same thing every day. I would turn up and I was processing paperwork and I was moving paperwork. Someone would fill in a form and I would type that form into a computer. And then I'd do that 34 times a day. And I did that for 7 years. I did have a couple of years of kind of enjoying work within the civil service where I found a different job, different road, where I was out on the road. It was different every day. I got to be my own boss a little bit, which meant I got to choose where I drove, who I saw in what order. Often got to choose my own hours as well. It was nice. I was on the road, complete freedom. But in true civil service style, I did that job for about 2.5 years, at which point the decision makers in the civil service said, we've decided that you guys aren't qualified to do this job, and this job needs to be done by someone of a much higher pay grade. So you're all sacked, and we're going to employ people who are far more expensive to come in and do this job on your behalf. So that job was ultimately taken away from me, and I was then told, well, you've got to find another job within the civil service. So I transferred to the child support agency. Oh my God. I thought I hated my job before then. I started my business on the training course, on the induction course for the child support agents, because I knew that within the first 3 weeks of starting, I'm not sticking this out. No way am I staying here. I think in my previous role, the average life expectancy of an employee was forever. It was probably at least 20 years. And in the CSA, it was 18 months. No one lasted longer than 18 months. And I, as it turns out, lasted 17 months.
Nearly.
So I brought their numbers down a little bit. That was what was creating that really strong desire to do something for myself. So I'd been in the civil service for 7 years, and I'd clearly reached the end of the road there. I needed to do something different. I applied for some jobs in the private sector, didn't get anything there. And at the time that I was knowing I was transferring to the child support agency, so I knew the job I enjoyed was coming to an end. I knew I was going into one I probably wasn't going to enjoy. It was around about the time of the dot-com boom of the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. So the world was full of these 20-something-year-olds all having ideas on the internet and just becoming millionaires overnight. And I just thought, well, I'm 20-something. I could do that. How hard can it be? And I can honestly remember exactly where I was. So I was in a little village visiting one of our civil service clients, and I was listening to the radio, and they were talking about the internet in some term. And they must have started talking about eBay, and it was online auctions. And I remember sitting there going, I could come up with an idea. I could do that. And I've got the domain name in my head. I mean, nowadays you have an idea, you register the domain name. This is back when domain names cost like 90 quid and took a week to reserve, and you had to fax some paperwork off to somebody in London. And I thought, I've got an idea here. Going.com. What a brilliant name that is. That's going to be my auction brand. So I drove home. Now, at the time, I didn't own a computer, let alone have access to the internet. So I arranged to go round to my girlfriend's parents' house, borrowed their computer, which had the old free serve dial-up 6K internet, went on to register this domain name, only to find that it had already been registered. And it had been registered the day before. So someone else had had the same idea as me on the same day as me. Who is it that's had this brilliant idea? So on the domain name, you could do a reverse lookup and see who's registered it. And it was a chap called Brent Hoberman. I don't know if you've heard of Brent. Brent was one of the co-founders of lastminute.com. He was like the British poster child of the .com world at the time. And I'm like, oh my God, I've just had the same idea as Brent Hoberman on the exact same day. He must have been listening to that same radio show and had the same idea and gone and registered the domain name. I'm like, there might be something in this. So I kept borrowing my girlfriend's parents' computer. I got myself a copy of Internet Marketing for Dummies, and I worked through that book from page 1 to page 250, and I just made a ton of mistakes along the way. Everything I've done since that day has been self-taught. So I'm aware you asked me where we are now, and we're still 25 years ago. So I will bring it up to speed a little bit at times. But from where we are now, to where we were then to where we are now, it's all been teaching myself how to do something, finding a blueprint for someone that's done it, getting a mentor to help me who's ahead of me on the journey, and then being a student of what works. So keep what works, throw away what doesn't. If it doesn't work, try something else. If that doesn't work, try something else. My first check, again, I'm sorry, kids, to use terminology that you may not be aware of. There's these bits of paper we used to have called checks. It's like a backs payment, or what do they call it these days? Venmo-ish. It's like an analog Venmo. That's what it is. I had my first check for £13.51, and that took me 9 months to earn that. It was 9 months of probably 2 hours a day on top of the day job every weekend, and quite a few sick days. I think I can say that now without any repercussions from anyone in the civil service from 25 years ago who's looking at my record of annual leave and sickness.
That's it. They'll be claiming it back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I think they've had it back in more than one way. But I mean, yeah, if you look at that as an hourly wage, was it 1 pence an hour, 2 pence an hour? It's ridiculous. But £13.51 for 9 months' work. 9 months after that, I left the day job. And 9 months after that, I was probably doing 100k a year. And it's just, that was the trajectory of being in the right place at the right time. So, just being there when the internet was really taking off. But also that determination to keep going, because there's a quote I used in my first book, and it's my mother-in-law, so which was the girlfriend's parents that I referred to earlier. We since got married, and mother-in-law. And the quote is, "Why is he wasting his time and money on this internet thing?" So I think from there, everything I've done has just snowballed, and it's just been, I'll try something. If it works, great. Double down on that. I was one of the first people to work with Google Ads when they launched in this country, and that first day, I was like, okay, I'll chuck 10 quid at this. Oh, that's worked. I've turned it into 30 quid. Brilliant. Well, let's roll that 30 quid. Before long, I'm spending 10 grand a month on there. And I'm thinking, I used to earn £10,000 in a year. This used to be a year's work. I used to have to work a job I hated for a year to earn this money, and now I'm just signing it over on a credit card to Google on a whim.
Yeah, mad, isn't it? When you think about it in that way, that this yearly salary is now, as you say, just on that whim.
Yeah,
off on Google.
I didn't. Oh, you did, yeah. You commented up. So you saw my photo on LinkedIn today. So I found a photo of me from, I think it was February 2002. So it was a couple of months after I'd started full time in the business. I'm sat at this desk. I mean, there's a can of Carling on the side. There's a massive monitor. There's some big speakers. There's no room for anything else on the desk because there's a monitor and some speakers.
And they were big speakers.
Well, they were huge.
Quality
they
speakers.
Were. Absolutely. And a lot of people said, I don't recognise you. I mean, I was a lot bigger and unhealthier then, kind of Carling accompanying me with my daily work. But I don't recognise myself. And that's the key thing, is I look back on that, what was that, 23 years ago, I don't recognise that guy. And the thinking and the mindset and everything, when I first started the business, I talked. I was interviewed for the local paper, and I wrote, I'd like this to be a real business one day. I wouldn't catch myself talking like that these days. I'm like, no, this is a real business. Who are you to say it's not a real business? Yeah, the language I was using then, the self-talk, everything, that is a different person. And I think 25 years of running a small business probably does that to you, but you don't see it day to day. You see it only, well, it was Steve Jobs that said that you can only connect the dots looking backwards. And yeah, that photo for me was a real look back at a time that I have no recollection of. Kind of Carling every day with your work will do that to you.
Breakfast?
Yeah, exactly. Well, breakfast of champions. But it's yeah, I do not relate to that person as I was. I don't. That person and me are two different people.
And I think that's really interesting. And it's kind of skipping on a little bit, but I think it's a very interesting point to try and understand. And that I want people to understand for themselves is when you look back, is the difference that not being able to connect the dots between looking back. And if you reverse that, when you were him with his can of Carling and his big monitor, your £13 check, looking forward, I don't suppose you ever would have seen where you are now.
No, not at all. I often talk about this with some of my clients, and I said, like, imagine that time travel has suddenly been invented, but it only works forwards. You can only go forwards in time. And I said, just imagine that, like, 20-year-old you just gets to come into your life now and be taken on a tour. Wow, you live here. Is that your car? Wow, that's amazing. Actually, what do you do? You've written all these books. You've written books. Bloody hell. I didn't think you could do anything like that. Wow. Well, what these holidays you go on, it's the lifestyle that we live now is, when you jump forward 20 years, is amazing. When you go forward like 18 months, you're like, not quite where I want to be. I'd like to be doing a bit better than I am now. But that long-term period, yeah, it is very difficult. When I first started my business, what was I focused on? Meeting the bills. That was it. It was, if I can earn £1,500 a month, I'm more than happy. I've come out of a civil service. I was doing probably £1,200 a month before tax. So I said, if I can do £1,500 a month, covers my tax, covers any lean months I do happen to get. That was my entire focus. And then I got caught up in the whole kind of snowball effect of the internet. And I say, before you know it, I'm doing 100K a year. So I've come from 12 grand a year. 2 years later, I'm doing 100K a year. There has been lots and lots of studies of people who get wealth very quickly, lottery winners, people like that, showing that they don't cope very well with sudden wealth. I could be another case study for that, because I didn't cope very well with it either, because I just thought, well, if I can do 100K a year, I can do $1 million a year. No idea of I need $1 million a year. I don't need $1 million a year. But someone else is earning £1 million a year. Why not me? And I really got caught up in that whole kind of willy waving competition of, how much do you earn? Oh, you earn, well, I don't get out of bed for less than 100K a month. Oh, okay. Well, perhaps I should do that. And I completely abandoned the guy who's just come out of a 12K a year salary and just wants 18 grand a year. That's all I needed. And I had a very nice lifestyle at 18 grand a year, but instead I needed 100K. So getting caught up in that whole, just comparing yourself to others. One person says, everyone earns 100K a year doing this. So I'm like, I need to earn 100K a month. It was, and just thinking that that's what I needed, when that wasn't what I needed at all. What I needed was the freedom. I quit a job I hated to do a job I loved. And I ended up then hating the job I loved, because I then created Frankenstein's monster. 2002, not long after that photo was taken, I'd have been doing really good money, like working here in my office alone, doing work I really enjoyed. And I thought, well, if I can do 100K a year, if I employ 10 people, collectively we'll do £1 million a year. I might have to give them some money, but we'll scale up brilliantly. So 2003, I employed 3 people. Sorry, 3 including myself. And that worked quite well. We all worked from home. We still worked on stuff that we enjoyed doing. And then 2004, yes, that's when it all started going wrong. That's when I went from 3 members of staff to 15. That's when I took on 2 offices. That's when we started a second business and a third business and a fourth business. And we just really got caught up in what everyone else was doing. Oh, someone else is doing they're selling life insurance. Oh, we made a bit of money selling life insurance. Right, we're going to start a life insurance company. We were flying up to Glasgow to work with Scottish Power to do telesales. Why? Because we can. Someone else did it, so we can do that. We'll have a national directory of florists. Why? Because someone else did it for a different sector. And it just really became, we copied everyone else. Anyone that was making money doing something, we just copy them. And we'd copy them badly. And it would be a poor imitation of it. And the more we did that, the more diluted we got, the less our core business actually did. And the more I hated my business. And before you know it, 2005, I fell out of my business. I, quote, retired. I'd reached the point of burnout, really. I was sitting in a hospital room and I'd come out in some weird rash. But I'm in my mid-20s now. In this room, and this nurse says to me, "You under any stress at all?" She's got this massive magnifier, like studying me. There's like, "Are you under any stress at all?" And I just unload. Yeah, I've got this problem happening, this problem's happening, this business is failing. We used to earn 20 grand a month doing this, and now it's costing us 3 grand a month, and we've got this lawsuit over our head, and this has happened. And she just went, a simple yes. I'm like, okay, thank you for that. So it's kind of, and then at the end of it, she was like, "You might want to speak to these people. I think you're on the verge of a nervous breakdown." So I quit my business, the business that I started, that was everything I wanted it to be. And I quit that business, giving away almost half the company for free, just because I couldn't face it anymore. And that didn't work out either, because stepping away from the business, suddenly I know I'm no longer in the business for a year. Next thing I know, the business has run out of money. So I'm then need to come back in. I'm then like Mr. Evil coming back in and saying, "Right, okay, I'm back. You're fired, you're fired, you're fired." We're closing down both the offices. We're shutting down this business. We're going back to how it used to be, 3 people all working from home. And that worked well for a good couple of years. We got back into the rhythm of things. And then I had kids, and things really changed then, because I still had this little niggling ambition to kind of, I don't even know for what reason, but I wanted that £1 million business. We turn over £1 million a year. I remember having a conversation with someone, a friend of mine was like, "Oh, what's your target what's your monthly target?" I went, 33 pence. Of course. He's like, "Yep, me too. That's the £1 million business." For what purpose? I have no idea, because I did not need £1 million to spend. Yeah. But I still wanted that. And I think a lot of it was like I know it's still on TV now, but the TV at the time was Dragon's Den had just come out. The Apprentice had just come out. So business was suddenly cool. And it was suddenly, big business was cool. And I'd watch the opening credits of The Apprentice, and there would be Sir Alan getting off his private jet, sailing on his yacht, getting into his chauffeur-driven limousine. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's me. That's where I'm headed. That's what I need to have. So I modelled myself on Alan Sugar. He was one of my role models, along with Richard Branson, of course. And when I had kids then, I'm sat in an MOT garage one day waiting for my car to be repaired. Got to use this time. Got to be productive with time. I'll take a book. A book, by the way, kids, is this printed thing we used to have with paper and the words on it. And it was Alan Sugar's autobiography. What you see is what you get. I'm reading it through. Right, okay, so he did this thing with the market trading, and this is how he got into Amstrad. And then, oh my God, suddenly I read this one line in the book. Never really there much for the kids when they were growing up. And I'm sat there with a 3-month-old baby at home who has suddenly overnight become my world. And I'm like, oh God, that sounds really bad now as well. He's 16 this year. And he doesn't like me talking about him in these senses now. But that idea that I wouldn't see my kids, if I was going to copy the blueprint, because that's a big part of my thing, is just find the blueprint. Who's done this? Right, Alan Sugar's done it. Right, follow his blueprint. What's his blueprint? Don't see your kids. Yeah, that's not what I want. And then I suddenly realised that what I truly wanted, wasn't yachts and helicopters and Rolls Royces. It was being at sports day for my kid. It was being at every assembly. It was doing the school runs. It was, well, let's take him on holiday. It was let's do whatever we can. There's a little cockapoo just walking around behind me now. It's going for a walk with him whenever I want. It's going out for a hike on the moors in the sunshine. It's having breakfast with my wife. That's all that matters. And I distilled it down. I wrote about this in my first book, Big Ideas for Small Businesses. I wrote down this job description, which was to do what I want, when I want, where I want, how I want, if I want. And when I wrote that down, I realized that I wasn't doing what I wanted. I was doing what everyone else wanted. I wasn't even doing it where I wanted because I was being dragged into an office I didn't want to have. How I want? No, I wasn't doing it the way I wanted. And everything became about freedom. And that's what I wanted. That's why I left the day job. I left the day job because that was a civil service. You will come to your desk at 9 a.m. and you will sit at that desk until 5 p.m. And literally, we are civil servants. We sat there and we all watched the clock. It's 3 minutes to 5. And I'll tell you what, if that phone rang at 3 minutes to 5, not it. No, not me.
9 to 5 is such an interesting. I talked about it this week. Such a misconcept. Just makes no sense because no one actually works that 9 to 5 anyway. And as you say, it gets to 3 minutes too, and you're like, well, I'm not answering the phone, I'm not doing anything, and it's 5 o'clock.
Exactly.
Goodbye.
Yeah. My favourite time was always the week between Christmas and New Year because the phones didn't ring and everything was just a little bit more lax. The boss would come in and he was wearing mufti or something, and you didn't have to adhere to the 9 to 5. And what you could actually do was get shit done. And you could actually clear some of the backlog of stuff, and you could work through all those jobs that need doing, but they don't get done normally because we've got our 9 to 5 set up. And it was just, it was that nice time. And it was almost probably what I modeled when I went to work for myself. It's like, I'm never going to be, it's 9 o'clock, start work, it's 5 o'clock, finish. And it's weird because I do sometimes do that now. I do sometimes, but that's more early finishes. I'm more like, sometimes I will say, I'm finishing at 3 today, no matter what. And again, that's kids that have helped with that.
You think if you hadn't have had that bit in the middle, so after the initial quitting to the children being born, would you have ever made that connection to the lifestyle business and what you really want to do part of it? Or did you need that bit in the middle to get to the now?
Yeah, I think I needed that pain. I needed that real wake-up call because that felt like a real slapping around the face. That was it was like Alan Sugar saying to me, what are you doing, John? You got it wrong. It was like the Dickens effect, the Ghost of Christmas Past, Present and Future. It was like Alan Sugar was playing the Ghost of Christmas Past saying, don't do what I did. Sorry, that was a really bad Alan Sugar impression there. If I didn't tell you it was an impression, you wouldn't
I'm pretty sure he
would
won't
you?
be listening, so maybe he will.
Absolutely. But yeah, no, I think I needed that wake-up call. I possibly would have, because it would have been a different wake-up call. It would have been a health wake-up call. It would have been something's going on with the health. Oh my God, I need to look after myself. I mean, I started focusing on health anyway, but because there's this weird thing when you have kids, you suddenly become really aware of your own mortality and don't want to leave them as orphans.
Yeah, completely, wholeheartedly understand that one. My 4 are, exactly why I did what I did, for the same reason. And you're right, those deadlines of the end of the school day, although mine are a bit older and kind of independent for the most part, or at least they span a reasonable age length. And they are now more sociable than us. They have more to do than us, which means I have to work even harder in the times I do have. But that freedom, I think, is still absolutely key. And that's the bit that I want to get across to people, is how important it is to have that time. If you are not happy what you're doing, that is usually the driver to stop and want to spend more time. And then it's about managing what you do in that time.
Yeah, I think, that word freedom it's banded around a lot, isn't it? I think it's freedom so it's freedom to do things. It's freedom to go do the school runs. It's freedom to have nice holidays. It's freedom to go hiking on the moors with the dog. but it's also freedom from. And you need freedom from your business, that your business does not rely entirely on you and require you to be doing, as I used to do, 100-hour work weeks. You need the freedom from that business, which gives you the freedom to do what you want to do. So it's a little bit push and a little bit pull.
Yeah, absolutely. What does your mother-in-law think now?
She loves to be reminded of it. It is her favourite thing. Remember when you didn't have any faith in me? I can completely see where she was coming from, because there was no sign that it was working. 9 months to earn £13.51. That sounds terrible. But if you look at when did I earn those £13.51? Probably in the 2 months before I got the check. The first 7 months was absolutely nothing. It was just spending a few £100 on domain names, constantly borrowing their computer. Oh, I need to buy my own computer now. Why is he wasting all his money? This isn't going anywhere. And again, it's that generational thing of, he's got a nice, safe, secure job in the civil service. He's got good promotion prospects. He's got a good pension. Why does he want to give all that up?
Interesting you touched on generational there, because I was going to ask, do you think it's a generational problem or a generational attitude that gives your mother-in-law, my mother, and people of that same age range why is he doing that? Why would you want to do that? That makes no sense.
Yeah, because it's the world that they grew up in. It's kind of, I'm 50 in a couple of years, so I'm almost experiencing it myself now, where the way I know that the world works isn't actually the way it works now. So as I'm going through that with, say, my son's 16 this year, so he's coming into the world of work. If I was to try and explain to him how to market a business on social media, I'm sorry, but he'd be telling me how to do it, because I don't know enough about that. And yeah, I think for that generation, it was very much just, it was what they knew was, well, you go to school, you get some good qualifications, you work hard, you get in with an employer, and you stay there for life, and you look after that job, and you don't do anything that's going to upset the apple cart and lose that job. There's a famous story about my dad. I might have referenced this in one of my books. I can't remember now. But one of the first things I started doing was having an email newsletter. And one day, it was someone's birthday. And he rang me up and said, are you coming around for someone's birthday? So yeah, I'll be round in about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. I'm just sending out my newsletter. He said, how many people get that now? I said, it's about 14,000 people. He went, oh wow, that must cost you a fortune in stamps. I said, Dad, you don't need stamps on email, don't you? Again, never let him forget that. Never let him live it down. But yeah, I do think it's generational. Just the way they were, it's their experience of life, and we will have the same. That our experience of life is different to the next generations.
Do you think it'll be less for us and our children?
Yeah, possibly.
Because I think the rate of change is much steeper for us than our parents. If I look back to my grandparents, so I actually have older parents anyway, but my grandparents would have gone through no aeroplanes, not like to moon landings, to no computers, to no phones, to landlines, to mobile phones, to smartphones. That's a massive, massive change. And our change curve is much bigger and much steeper, but we know more, and I think we see more. So, we may not understand social media. My children spend their life on Snapchat. I mentioned Facebook, but you're old. WhatsApp. Really? Snapchat, Dad? Like, well, do you want me on Snapchat? No. Good. But I think we get it. We still understand that. Whereas, I'll talk stuff about my mum with my mum, and she has no concept.
I think a lot of it is, again, we are aware that the world has changed. When, again, the point that I was kind of looking to make that change, the world was changing.
Yeah.
And it hadn't changed. And this idea that, hang on, you want to leave a safe, secure job for life, great pension prospects. We use that as a cliche now, but 30 years ago, that was the plan. That was what you did. That was what my parents did. That's what their parents did. That's what their parents before them did. That's what everyone does. And I happened to do that at the point whereby I was giving that up for this internet thing. And that's all anyone ever called it, was this internet thing. Wasn't, it wasn't I'm going to start an accountancy practice, or it wasn't I'm starting a bar. It wasn't a business model that they understood. It was just, I mean, even now, my parents don't know what I do. So I run a group coaching platform for small business owners called the 1% Club. I went round to my parents last week and I explained to my mum that I'd been on a trip with some of our 1%. They said, well, what's this 1%? It's a 1% Club. Do you know Lee Mack? No, Mum, it's not the ITV game show. It's a group coaching thing for business owners. And you could just see in her face, like, so do you ever speak to Lee Mack?
Other than your mother-in-law doubting you, what other support did you have, or indeed not have, when you kind of said to people, that's it, I'm leaving?
Yeah, so, my sister actually died just before I left the day job. So one of the last conversations that I had with her was, are you sure you know what you're doing? Because you are giving up a nice, safe, secure job. And again, my sister was a little bit older than me. She was 11 years older than me, but it still felt like that generational, what are you doing? But a little bit more understanding of, okay, I trust you. Are you sure you know what you're doing? Have you thought it through? Have you got a plan B? What if this doesn't work? Because I'd also just taken on a mortgage in the last 12 months. So it was kind of like, you're getting serious at life now. You've just got married. You've just taken on a mortgage. And now you're quitting the job to go and play on the internet. And that, I don't know if it was support, but it was somewhere between the, I don't believe you can do this, and are you sure you know what you're doing? I had some, in terms of support, I guess the people at the day job were supportive. They knew I had ambition to work for myself for a good, 18 months or 17 months at least, before I actually did. So they knew what I wanted to do. And there was that little bit of a safety net that actually they did say to me, if this doesn't work out and 6 months' time, you have run out of money and you've got no customers, you're welcome back. We'd take you back in a heartbeat. So I don't think they would now. And I don't think I'd want to go back now. But it did remove a big barrier, because there is that fear element of, what if this doesn't work out? I am quitting the safe, secure job for life. Well, actually, I can get that job back, or I can get another job very similar to this one if I do that decision within a year or two. For that period, if you look at my CV, I've got recent experience of doing that job. I've got lots of experience doing that job. I've got the skills. I went and tried something. It didn't work, and now I want a job again. That is the worst case scenario, but we catastrophize things and say, well, if it doesn't work out, I haven't got a job. Yeah, I haven't got a job for about 2 weeks, and then I do. And I'm back where I started. It's not that difficult to get back where you were if things don't go wrong. No, if things do go wrong.
Yeah. And that fear, I think, always is there for people looking to move, looking to change, the what ifs. And you're right, the catastrophizing and wondering what's the worst that can happen. Everyone will hate me. My family will be right. All those things.
Yeah.
Mother-in-law strike. Oh, that internet thing, that's never going to pay off. Of course, that is what people worry about. Were you worried financially? Obviously, I know you got your check down the line and you had some. Was there, and I can't remember, forgive me if you said, was there a transition where you did some days in the civil service and others on the business? Or was it a complete changeover, having worked the nights and the weekends, etc.?
Yeah. So I went part-time for about 4 months. which was, I think that really, really helped alleviate the fears when I went full time, because again, I've gone from 5 days a week down to 3 days a week because of the tax setup. Kind of don't, I lose heavily taxed income and I still have all my personal allowance. So I don't lose that much money. By cutting my hours by 40%, I don't lose 40% of my take home pay. I might lose 25% of my take home pay. So I don't need to earn as much in the business. Getting back where I was is as simple as going back into the boss and saying, can I go full time again, please? And it might be, oh, you need to wait a quarter. It might be, there's no positions right now, but we can do that. So getting back where I was is easy. But then the minute I would go, I need to do this, sorry. So the minute I would go into work on the days I had to work, and I would get this calculator, right? This is a civil service calculator to go with my civil service paper that I still have. I still have this. Let's say I knew I was leaving the civil service sometime before I actually left. The office supplies are plenty here. But I would go in and I would work out, okay, I've been paid £30 to be here today. And I know if I go home and work on the business, I earn £50. So every day I would go into work saying, it's costing me 20 quid to come to work today. I'm doing something I'm not enjoying, and it's costing me 20 quid to be here. So that alleviated the fear of going full time, because I knew what I could do when I can, really attack this full time. And that helped with that. I did have a little bit of kind of safety net. I made sure my earnings were at the 1,500 level. I only needed 1,200, so it was that little buffer there. I did that for probably 4 months before quitting. So I probably had 2 months salary in the bank. I know everyone said you should have 6 months or whatever, but I really hated my job. And I think I backed myself as well. I invested and backed myself and said, I can do this. I also think that fear helped. The fear of, if this all goes wrong, I've got to tell my parents that I made the wrong decision. I've got to go back to all the people who I went, see you later in work, to say, can I have my job back, please? And this stuff's on the internet now, so the whole world will know that I failed. And that has always been for me a big, big motivator. I want to prove people wrong. It's the reason that Why Is He Wasting His Time and Money on This Internet Thing is in that book. It's a reason why I've been alcohol free for 12 years now, after one of my family members said when I announced it, I give it a week. I remember stuff like this, and I have a strong desire to prove people wrong. And so I was able to use, what if this does all go wrong, to make sure it bloody doesn't go wrong.
Talking about that desire and drive, and going all the way back to when you took that aptitude test at school and it came up with marketing, which no one does in Plymouth. It's probably because it's in Devon and, we don't do anything. It's all London. Do you think that was the start of where you are now? Does that marketing bug kind of fit into that ambition and desire to be the trajectory of where we are today?
I think so, because marketing was never on my radar until that aptitude test, until that careers advisor said, marketing, but you can't do that. It was never on my radar. It wasn't really on my radar throughout my civil service career, but what's the first book I picked up? Internet Marketing for Dummies, because I knew, so I started off thinking, I'll just have an idea. Someone will give me some money for that idea. Then I thought, I'll have an idea. I'll register the domain name, and then someone will magically write to me and say, I'd like that domain name, please, and the idea that goes with it. Here's £1 million. And then when I realized that didn't work, perhaps I need to get some traffic to these domains. Perhaps I actually need to learn how to build a website. Perhaps I need to learn how to market myself and how to market the business. And then it kind of grew from there as, I enjoy this marketing thing. Then again, find the blueprint. Someone else has done internet marketing, and it's some lad in a bedroom in Glasgow. And there's another guy who used to be a HGV driver from Sheffield. And then there's another guy who worked in a biscuit factory in Newcastle. And collectively, we were all figuring this stuff out. And none of us had a marketing degree. None of us had gone to university. We were all, quote, normal bloke from insert your town here, just playing on the internet, figuring it out. And from that moment on, I fell in love with marketing. And I just knew that this is what, not necessarily what I'm put on this planet to do, but it's what I love to do. And to this day, you know, when I work with business owners, I get to go into their business and say, this is how I would market your business. Oh my God, for you, marketing's easy. Just do this, 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 and this. And yeah, it's lights me up. It really does.
I can see that. It's encouraging, and it's great to see that that is clearly a passion that comes through when you start talking about it. And I find it very interesting that it was started all the way back with that aptitude test, that marketing came up. Because I think a lot of people start careers probably from a careers test like that. And I've talked before in some of the bits that I've done about building a career on a fault line where people are forced down a path that isn't necessarily right for them. Be it cultural, social, just the desire to go to university because, you know, I'll be the first in the family, so I'm going to do it and do a degree of whatever it happens to be, irrespective of what comes out the other end. And I think it's these kind of people that need to hear that it's okay for that change.
Yeah, absolutely.
Were you ever worried that making the 100K was just a dream? Or did you just think, I'm going to do it, whatever?
It happened so quickly.
Okay.
Because, you know, I remember seeing it and seeing other people talking about, you know, the six-figure salary, and it was the whole, you know, six-figure income, back when six figures was a lot of money. But I remember thinking, oh, that would be nice. And then it became real. You know, talk about that, you know, me in that photo. I was still that same person. So I was still I'm worth K a year, but I was earning 100K a year. And I don't know which is a more damaging mindset, a 12K person who gets 100K or a 100K mindset who only gets 12K. I don't know which of those would be worse. But all I know is that mindset did not match what I was earning. And now I think, yeah, it's strange because if I was to put a different figure on it now, and you know, let's pluck a figure out the air and say, you know, could I earn 500K? My first reaction now would be, why do I need to earn 500K? Whereas, yeah, me when I was, you know, young and full of piss and vinegar was, yeah, bring it on. Why stop at 500? You know, because someone else is earning more than that. And now I would just go, I don't need that. Okay. My second question then would be, how hard do I have to work? Yeah, it's a very, very different mindset. I think, you know, the financial figure, if I wanted it and I'm willing to pay the price, I could earn any figure. Because I know how to reverse engineer success to achieve any level of success. The kicker is whether I want it, is that desire. You know, I talk in Big Ideas for Small Business about the 5 magic ingredients: goals, desire, knowledge, environment, action. Well, without desire, nothing happens. Because, you know, would I like £500,000 a year? Yes. Yeah, lovely, thank you. Do I want to do what's necessary to get it? No, I do not. Absolutely not. Desire is 0.
And I think that changes for people who are fresh out of a career, regardless of age, actually, because I'm aiming my work at people somewhere between kind of 35 and 45, because I think that's where the kids come in, the marriage, and life begins to change. So I don't think it's necessarily young age thing. But I think you have to want that, to have that desire and that drive to maybe make that million, to make that leap possible when you first come out of it, because you have to push yourself. You have to be ambitious, have that desire to drive forward. So Do you think it takes a certain type of person to want to leave their career to do something different? And do you think that has always been burning away at?
Yeah, possibly. I think what is that burning criteria for, and are we separating the financial side of things from the fulfillment side of things? The amount of people I speak to in that kind of 35 to 45 bracket that will say to me, and the language they use will be, I only need to earn, insert your figure here. As long as I earn X amount, I'll be all right. The most important thing is that I can have 7 weeks holiday a year so I can go away with the kids. That I can reduce my hours during the school holidays. I can do the school runs. I can be there for my elderly parents. I can play golf on a Friday. Whatever the criteria is, I notice that it's primarily lifestyle, followed by, but I do need to earn a certain amount of living. When I was younger, it was, how much can I earn? And then what lifestyle will that get me? And I think it was just like, well, more money's better, isn't it? If money's good, then more money must be better. When I think what you possibly realize when you get to 35, 45 is more time is better, more freedom is better, more enjoyment of life is better. And yes, money helps with that, but up to a point. There was some kind of study, wasn't there, about, I think it's 70k is the optimum point, at which point returns diminish beyond that. So, up to 70k, you're pretty much correlated happiness and money. Anything above that, you are ever diminishing returns.
And again, that comes, I think, with children, with a change in life where you realize, actually, I can have all that money, but I can't spend it quick enough. And actually, if I'm tied to a job with 4 weeks holiday, if I'm lucky, then I'm never going to have the time.
Do you find it's a trigger? Is there a specific trigger? Because for me, it was the MOT garage. For my wife, it was a green pen. So she was a teacher, and she was told, you're only allowed to mark in a green pen. You're not allowed to use any other color pen. She was like, I'm 35 years old. Why are you telling me what pen I'm allowed to use?
And I'm sure there's some crazy reason behind that.
Yeah.
I think the trigger seems to be varied depending on the profession. So I deal predominantly with healthcare professionals who obviously have a very high stress, high intensity job, who feel undervalued, probably underpaid. But again, that's that correlation between the number of hours you spend, the value you perceive to have, and what you're actually doing. But I think, there's usually something that breaks that camel's back. For me, it was twofold, because I've done it kind of twice. The first was when I quit my job in Harley Street to move to Devon. And that was the getting on the train in the morning, just full of absolute fear and dread. Never mind the chest pain and palpitations that went with it. That was the kick to say, I'm done. I quit. And I went into the boss's office and I said, I quit. And then the second time was post-COVID, where I'd been made redundant in 2019 and I wanted to do something, got offered another sales type job and thought, well, the money's good, why not? Now, of course, in hindsight, that was exceptionally fortuitous because then COVID hit. So I was actually fully employed all the way through COVID. Didn't have to visit any hospitals and sat on my butt doing not a great deal, and yet quite a lot at the same time. So coming out of that was the real trigger, going, I quite like sitting on my butt doing nothing, but I want to do my own thing. And it wasn't the not doing anything at all, because I can't sit still if I try, for the most part. But it was that I don't want to be away from the kids. They're young. I've had this great time. We've been in the garden. We've walked to the beach. We've done all those great things. I don't really want to go back. Now is the time to start my own business.
I'm convinced there's always that moment where suddenly think it was Alan Sugar, slap me with a fish. It's like there's somebody slapping you with a fish. Luke, one of the guys who works for me, he works for me because he used to work for a company local to him, local-ish to him, who furloughed him over COVID. He encountered working from home. Oh, I love this. This is brilliant. This is exactly what I want to do. COVID's over. Right, back in the office, please. 45 minutes each way to work every day. Oh, can I not just stay working from home? No, you can't do that. Oh, okay, then I'm off. And that was that trick. He only works for us because we offered him that plan. I'd completely forgotten this. When I left the day job, 3 months, that would have been 3 months before, no, maybe 6 months, but certainly towards the end of my tenure, I applied for promotion and I didn't get it. And someone far junior and far less qualified than me got it because you haven't been in this department long enough. Sorry, I know you've been a civil service for 7 years, but we only start the clock ticking when you joined our department. It's like, sorry, rules are rules. And I just walked out there thinking that was wrong. And I don't want to work in a place where that's the way they run things around here. And I think that was probably the moment I decided to work for myself and really go for it. And then, my sister's death. So they gave me 2 weeks grief leave, I suppose, for want of a better word, compassionate leave. That's the word I'm thinking of. And my first day back in the office, I had my resignation letter in my suit pocket, and it was because I'd had that conversation with my sister, and it was like, life is too short. So do I want to waste it in this building, or do I want to have a go? And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I'm going to find out if this works, and if it does, there's huge upside, and if it doesn't, there's very little downside.
And I think you have to have that have a go attitude. And I think that is really one my previous question about, does it take a certain type of person? There are people, thank goodness, who will teach, who will be medics, who will work in the civil service from the day they qualify to the day they get carried out. And thank goodness for those people. But I think the people who have an itch and then have a trigger, whatever that trigger is, will leave anyway and do something else. And that's, I think, when they realise that they are happier doing something else. And it is about the lifestyle. It's so much more than the money. And part of the work I do is, and what I'm interested to touch about on the finances, is it's what can you do to start that lifestyle now? What can you give up? So can you give up a cup of coffee on your way to work, on the 45-minute commute? Actually, if you're giving up a cup of coffee, that saves £3, £4, depending. That you can then start to make that buffer. And as you spoke about, you had the 2 months because you really hated your job, not the 6 months. But there are ways to do that. And I think people need that confidence to have something saved and a way to understand that actually I am going to limit my resources, but the upside is the lifestyle that I can have, dog walking, the time with the kids. All of that means so much more.
Did a talk last year and we started talking a lot about the 5 magic ingredients. And I really, really spent a long time talking about desire, because there were a few people in the room who were employed and I'd like to start a business. I've got this big dream, and it was all but this, but that. I said, look, desire is, imagine there's a scale 0 to 100. 0 is I'm not, I have no interest in this whatsoever. 100 is I will do whatever it takes. Absolutely 100% whatever it takes to achieve this goal. And for most people, you're somewhere on that scale. Most people aren't going to be at 100. My desire to get at the civil service was high 80s. I will do whatever it takes. I've got to live on pot noodles and, turn the heating off and, just borrow money from everywhere, left, right, and centre. I will do that. I've got to work 100-hour weeks. Yep, I'll do that. I'll do whatever it takes. And that, for me, is the key element between the people who talk about getting out and the people who do get out. How badly do you want it? Because if you say you want it really badly, are you doing whatever it takes? Are you sacrificing that coffee? Are you sacrificing time watching Netflix? Are you sacrificing, your finances, your relationships to do whatever it takes to get out? doing whatever it takes isn't always a positive thing. But if you want it badly enough, that is what you will do. If you were going to be, I don't know, if I told you had to earn £1 million next year, bullet to one of your children's heads, like, well, I'm going to make that happen. It will happen no matter what. Now, you won't have a life outside of that, and it will be all encompassing and probably traumatic for the rest of your life. But you'd make it happen because desire 100, no doubt about it. And it's just being very, very clear. Because if you don't want it, if that desire-ometer is a 27, when things get tough, you're going to quit. You're going to give up. You're going to say, it didn't work. How much did you actually try? How hard did you actually work? How much did you sacrifice to make it happen? Did you do 9 months of full-time work for £13.51?
Yeah. Do you think that there's a sliding scale to that desire as time goes on? Maybe I hate my job because it's Monday morning, 27. Actually, 6 months down the line, I hate every day of my job, 60. I have now had completely enough. Right, 80%, time to go.
Yep. You'll get, and again, that's why I said about the trigger, because the trigger could be, or the baseline could be, it's a 40. I really hate this job. It's terrible. And then there's one conversation. It's like, I don't know. Oh, my cousin's getting married. Can I have a day off, please? No, you can't. Oh, why the hell not? Oh, because that's the rules around here. You've used all your leave. Your leave year doesn't start again until next April. Really? Or you've got to write in a green pen, and suddenly that 40, only for one day or one instance, becomes a 75, and then it doesn't come down to a 40. It comes down to 45, and then the next time something happens, it comes down to 50, and you're like, and the next time it bubbles up, you're like, right, that's it. It's time.
Yeah, I'm out of here. There's that resignation letter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have there been times over the last 10, 15 years, other than when you stepped out in 2005, have there been other times where you've ever thought, what did I do? Why have I done it? I'm, not necessarily going back, but just really struggling, maybe financially, maybe with family, or with some other aspect that's just made you think, yeah, I should never have done this in the first place?
Probably only 2,000 or 3,000 times, I would have thought.
Yeah, every day.
It's one of those, we often talk about it in the 1% Club. It's like, there's this dilemma between, we as business owners are unemployable, but we every now and then we cast envious glances at the employed and we go, you don't know how good you've got it. So I remember one particular instance, and it was financially driven. So it was everything was going wrong, but it was like financial stuff. And I remember walking home one day and I was just really had the weight of the world on my shoulders. And I just spotted this guy, and he got off the bus, went in his front door. It was 5 o'clock in the evening. He went in his front door and shut the front door. And I went, you've just shut that door, and you don't have to even think about work until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Me, this is a 24 job. Running a small business kind of becomes your life, and it does become all encompassing. And that's why I'm very keen to have that freedom from the business as well. But even when I'm on the moors and I'm hiking with the dog and I'm having a wonderful time, I'm still thinking.
But I think that's okay.
Yeah.
For me, because I understand that. I very rarely switch off. People say, what are you doing at the weekend? Or, I'm so glad it's Friday. I try not to pay too much attention to that, because if I get up...
What did we say when we first come on this call today? What day is it?
Exactly.
Because every day is just the same, isn't
Absolutely.
it?
I think a couple of Sundays ago, I woke up, the kids were still in bed, Stacey was still in bed. I was like, I'm going to do some work. But it doesn't bother me, because actually, come Monday, probably did nothing. Or I went out, we did lunch or did something else. I think it's just that freedom to have that lifestyle and choose. And actually being out on the moors, I'll take the dogs to the beach, and it's the same. I'm listening to a podcast, or there's something going on in my head that says, right, when I get back, when I get back from the dog walk, when I get back from the school run, I'll carry on. And I think that's that.
And I think that's where that it merges with life, doesn't it? And it just becomes you're out on the beach with the dog, and suddenly, because you're not in the day to day, your brain is able to process the stuff and go, David, this is what you need to do. This is the one thing. Go press this button when you go back in the office. Right, okay. And now all of a sudden we're doing purposeful, you know, deliberate, strategic actions rather than instinctful. Well, I'm here, just send more emails, do more stuff. The phone's ringing. I get so stressed when multiple things are happening and there's balls to be juggled. Getting out of myself and just chilling, suddenly you realize that very few things actually make a difference.
And that brings it back to the 9 to 5, where you're sat because you are forced to work 9 to 5, and you must be creative in this period of time and do all your work and not stop. And you think, well, but I know if I go out for a walk, that's it. It just flows. I was listening to something the other day, and I can't remember a podcast, maybe Diary of a CEO, one of them, and they were talking about just that and saying, how come when I stop working or listen to music, the ideas just flow? And I think that, again, that's that beauty. That's the, yes, the guy's lucky to get off the bus at 5 and shut his front door and not have to think about it.
Yeah, but I don't know what happened behind that door. I made up my own little story about he might have been gone behind the door and gone, I hate this job. Why do I have to go back to it? He might have spent all night tossing and turning awake, worrying about work. But I put my own narrative there that it's all right for you.
As we're prone to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's all good. I like action. I'm a big believer in action. I can sit and, we can all procrastinate and do a million and one, write a million lists. But I know that action wins all the time. What advice would you give to someone who maybe is on the procrastination side to take action?
It's a funny because when I speak to procrastinators, it is like I'm having a conversation with someone in a different language. Because there is a little bit of, well, why are you procrastinating? Just do it. And well, how can you just do it? Stop procrastinating. So I come back to these magic ingredients again. So for those who are watching on the old video, I just moved my camera up there. I don't know if you can see above me there. I've got goals, desire, environment, action. Action is in red, and it's got an exclamation mark there because that's how important it is. It's nothing happens unless somebody does something. So for me, it's not any old action. So it's about deciding what is, and for me, it's the one thing. It's the lead domino. It's the crucial few things that are going to really move the needle. And the main thing that helps for me is to know what my one thing is. So if I know what my one thing is for this week, which I have because I have it written down on my weekly plan, which is in front of me here, and there's a big red box here which says this week's one thing. So I know what one action I need to take this week. Done that based on my 90-day plan, which is here. So I know the 3 things that I want to achieve this quarter, and I know that based on my goals for the year that are here, and everything is reverse engineered back to what am I doing this week, and then what is my one thing for today. And my one thing for today goes on one of these. Goes on a post-it note, and it gets stuck to my monitor every morning. And all I do is when I finish achieving it, screw it up, chuck it in the bin. And I've then got a bin full of screwed up post-it notes of me having done the most impactful, the most important, the few things that actually make a difference. If you are procrastinating, something's missing. So have you got a goal? Do you desire it badly enough? Do you have or do you lack the knowledge of what to do? Is your environment stopping you from being productive? And finally, are you taking the action? If you're not taking the action, it's one of the previous 4 that's going wrong. There is a reason you are procrastinating. I genuinely don't procrastinate because I've lined up those 4 things. I know that I've set achievable goals that I absolutely desire. I make sure I've got the knowledge. And if I don't have the knowledge, I make sure that getting the knowledge is my one thing. And I craft my environment. I make sure that the door is shut, the distractions are off, the phone is on, do not disturb. I've got a big mug of peppermint tea in there. The dog is kept mainly quiet. And I just know that's how I work productively. I create those boundaries and I create those frameworks. And I guarantee if there is something that you want to achieve that you're not achieving through any level of procrastination, you've got to look at those first 4 ingredients. There is a reason that you haven't pulled the trigger. It may be you don't know what to do, in which case figure out what to do. It may be you don't know how to do it, in which case figure out how to do it. It may be that your home environment, your work environment is not conducive to actually getting stuff done, in which case put yourself in a better environment. But figure out why you're not pulling the trigger.
Do you think a change of environment helps that? So working at the kitchen table, for example, if you kind of just stuck in your office, do you think, right, I'm just going to take my laptop, go work at the kitchen table, find a local quiet hotel, go work at the hotel, just to change that up? Because I find I get very bored very easily.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll just go and move around. Actually, I've got a desk there. That was a recent charity shop find. I'll just turn around and work there. And it's amazing how much difference just that can make in that environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And even to the point of you could stay at the same desk, but you could wear a uniform. You could put a hat on and it will put you in a different place. I've got a hat. Are you familiar with Moneyball?
No.
The Michael Lewis book. So it's a book about the Oakland Athletics baseball team, and basically they were one of the lowest budget teams in the league, and they managed to make the playoffs 3 years in a row, whatever, by spending their money better than anywhere else. It was all about using data to make better decisions. There's a movie on Netflix starring Brad Pitt as Billy Bean. Good movie. It's a true story. So I'm a fan of this. So I got myself an Oakland A's baseball cap, and this was fairly recent. And I went for a walk. I went for a hike, and I was pondering a problem. What do I do about some kind of one of my marketing channels? What do I do about this? So I went out walking with this hat on, and I got about halfway around the local National Trust place and went, well, with my Moneyball hat on, the answer is this. And then it suddenly realized that just looking through that framework of having a different hat on made me think, well, if I approach the problem from a financial angle rather than a creative angle, the answer is obvious. And the amount of people who can just put themselves in a coffee shop and suddenly they're a writer, or they say, we used to do stuff in the kitchen. The minute I put in here and the minute that door is shut, it's work time. And I can put on music, and it affects the way I work. The environment is so important, and if your environment is hurting you, try stuff. Try. So I can't work in a noisy environment. When we had the offices, that was a big driver for me. Was I can't work here because there's just people everywhere, and people are constantly sticking their head in the door saying, oh, got a minute, John, a quick question. Yeah. It's like, no, I'm trying to focus. Whereas now here, I can shut the door. I can set a timer for 90 minutes. I've got some binaural beats playing in the background. Nice big mug of tea. And I'm just, wow, where did that last hour and a half go? Oh, I've suddenly churned out 2,000 words on my next book. That doesn't happen if I'm in a coffee shop.
I get that. I kind of have to play. The hat thing's an interesting one. I might have to try to start wearing a baseball hat with something on it to kind of see what's there.
Yeah.
The 1% gains, and I know you talk about, but what makes the boat go faster? Love that analogy. Often think about that myself. How do you work through what those 1% things are? Obviously, you've got your goals, you've got your 90-day. You've got that. How do you really define what that 1% is? And I'm kind of thinking someone's stuck in a job, they're doing a few bits and pieces. They can't quit right now. They've got that kind of 3-day, 2-day split. What is the 1% things that they should be doing? What is that 1% that they should be doing to allow them to move forward?
I think 1% gains are probably more appropriate when you are a bit more established.
Okay.
We get some people who say to me, I've recently started a business. Is the 1% Club going to work for me? I said, it can work for you, but improving your business from a very low base point by 1% each week isn't going to make a lot of difference. So I'm sticking you in the 10% club. And you've got to leave your business 10% better every week for the first 6 months. And then you can start doing 1% weekly gains. So it is those big building blocks. Where's your first customer coming from? What is going to be your key marketing strategy? What is your positioning going to be? What is the problem that you are going to solve for people? There's a fill in the blanks line that I used in Evergreen Assets. And that's we help blank to blank by blank. So we help. Who do you help? You help them to do what? And how do you do that? So, we help medical professionals aged 30, 45 to quit the day job and start the life of their dreams through the process of insert your framework here. And nailing those things makes everything else so much easier, because suddenly when it comes to do your marketing, you know who you're writing for. You know who is this for. You know what problem you are solving for them. Business is all about problems. Every business that exists anywhere in the world, they exist because they are solving a problem. And if they're a successful business, they are successfully solving problems. And then the final bit is, how are you going to do it? And that's almost the least important, because the most important is, who are you solving the problem for, and what is that problem you solve? I help expectant mothers to connect with their babies. I help 50-year-old men to increase their testosterone levels. I help pensioners to feel better about their dentures. It's almost like you've got a random business generator here, isn't it?
Excellent. Sorry, can you just repeat those? I'm just going to write those down. I think we've got some.
Yeah. But I hear so many people, and it really, really does annoy me when I say, who's your target market? Oh, everyone, really? No, it's not. That's what I said when I first started. Oh, my business is for everyone. It's like, no, it's not. Your business helps a specific person to achieve a specific result. And the more you can mirror that back at people, the more people say, well, that's exactly what I need. So let's work together. And I think, ensuring you do something every week that is improving your business. And it can be looking at your pricing. It can be, let's get some paid ads up. It could be, have you got a website? Have you got customer testimonials? Do you collect reviews? There's eventually you will have what I call an evergreen assets, that ecosystem of assets. Towards the end of that book, I made a key point. I laid out a lot of the assets that I've got in my businesses, and there's hundreds of them, but they didn't start there. So my coaching business, I started with 6 people around my kitchen table. That was it. 6 people I knew, no website, no social media presence, no paid ads, no books, no podcasts, nothing. Just 6 people I knew and my kitchen table. My sports betting business, I bought a 1-page website on eBay for 500 quid. That was it. That was all I had. Again, no paid ads, no employees, no money, no resources, just a 1-page website. That's where I started. And much like that photo I talked about on LinkedIn, where it's back in date, you've got to start where you are. Don't obsess over where you want to be, obsess over where you are, and then be one step forward from there.
And I think that's absolutely key for people looking to change a career, because you've got to do those steps. And some of the steps you just mentioned, let's say you're a doctor and you want to start a florist's, we want to do flower arranging. Who do you know who might need some flowers? Right.
Yeah, exactly. Who's your first customer?
Right. First customer. Get them a testimonial. Get that review.
Yeah. Don't sign the lease on the shop and a 3-year contract with Interflora before you've sold your first thing. How many times have you seen on Dragon's Den where they go on, they've got, it's a lovely pitch. How many customers have you had so far? Oh, we haven't sold any. We've just got this idea. Like, no, go sell some.
So I'd say what always amazes me about that, and also with the financials on Dragon's Den, is, that show's been around 20
Yeah, it's
years.
like no one's ever seen
No
it
one ever
before.
watched it. But that's the one, you can guarantee the questions they're going to ask in a roundabout kind of way, at least the subjects and the topic, and people still turn up and go, yeah, I don't really, someone else deals with that. I just think, well, you've missed something.
Yeah, how many of you sold? Well, I was hoping you guys would help with that.
Yeah, never mind 1%, like 100%, do something.
Yes.
It's just, but I think it's good for people to understand. You're right. Don't go by the shop. Do something right here, right now that you can move that forward, and then the shop will come. If it works, the shop will come.
Yeah.
And if not, to your earlier point, a couple of weeks, you're back in a job. And actually, healthcare professionals, especially, they are being cried out for.
Yeah.
If you leave,
getting back where you were is a piece of cake.
Yeah. Very few people are going to say, actually, no, sorry, we don't need doctors anymore. It's been a month, we're done.
Yeah, we've got AI now. We're all sorted. Thank you.
Oh yeah, it won't be long.
We discovered that people can just Google stuff and they'll find out what's wrong with them that way.
And who doesn't love a bit of web Google MD? Brilliant. I think that's kind of, it brings it around nicely to that. Yeah, I think thank you. I really appreciate the time. I was telling someone earlier, I think you are, and I've said this before, when I first started my own journey and I found your book, I don't even know how I found it now. Oh God, yeah, I don't really want to read that or listen to that. And it's definitely been, transformational. And I was talking to someone earlier this week. Again, I think you can get caught up in the Grant Cardones, the Gary V's, all these, people. And that's back to your earlier point about, right, okay, million, that's, all these amazing people, the Alan Sugars, the Richard Bransons. And then it comes to a point you go, but that's not me. That's not
exactly.
That's not who I want to be. And I think you have to just really narrow that down to find the people that you resonate with and make sense for what you want. And your line about doing what you want, when you want, if you want. I'm actually going to find your book, which is on my shelf here. And I think I might photocopy that because it's always there and I have it.
It's one of those things. I wrote that, 16 years ago now. That hasn't changed. What I want has changed. And where I want has changed and all that. But ultimately, me having the freedom is everything that we want. And even now, we make decisions in the business. So last year, we ran a boardroom, which was like a mastermind group for 6 people. And we talked about expanding it for this year. And we said, okay, well, we've got capacity to expand it. What does that look like? And not one of the discussions were around money. It was around, well, how many days in the hotel is that going to mean? Where is it going to be? Okay, well, if we do it in Plymouth, I can do it. If it's going to be Bristol or we've moved on to Birmingham, then I'm out because I don't want to travel up and down the motorway. And that was my only criteria was where's it going to be, who's going to be in it, and is it going to be fun? And that was it. And then it became, all right, and then it's going to be, it's profitable and it pays the bills, lovely. But that was never the first criteria. The first criteria is, do I want to do it? And even now, we're about a third into the year. 10 people versus 6 is very different. 2 cohorts versus 1. So we're having the conversation now. Do we want to do the same again next year? Do we want to scale it back next year? That's the freedom we've got to do that. Of course, and this may be a point to make for the book, is in order to have that freedom, we do need to make some money. And we do need to have the margin to be able to do that. Because if I am worried about money, I'm doing 20 clients next year, not 10. And we always said we would never do anything for the money. But that's how I started my business, was doing stuff for the money.
And it is that fine balance because you can't do those things without the money. So you kind of, I'm right.
I think someone talked about like a hierarchy of needs. So you know that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It wasn't. He said like you look after yourself and you just, right, I'm all right. Then you look after your family. It's like, right, the family's all right. Then it's you look after your extended family. Then it's your neighborhood. Then it's your local region. Then it's your country. Then it's the world, then it's, humanity. But you don't start with humanity, you work with yourself and you're right, I need my bills covered first. Once that's all right, then we can start looking at doing stuff for the wider community, for the wider good of the world. What a lot of people will do is they'll go, right, I want to quit my job and save the planet. Great. Go look after yourself first. Once your bills are paid, then save the planet. You can't start with saving the planet. Elon Musk wants to save the planet by taking us all to Mars. And it really made me chuckle because I've known this for a while and he's been blathering on about Mars for a long time now. But I found an interview with him on the day he sold out of PayPal. So he'd made his first $80 million. And they said, what are you going to do with the money? And he went, I'm going to colonize Mars. And it's like, that's what he wants. He's got that very, very strong North Star. Tesla, autonomous vehicles, that's minutia to him. The long-term plan is how do we get to Mars? But he's got to look after himself first. He's got to make sure his bills are covered before he steps up.
Yeah, for sure. I think.
And alienate the rest of the world while he's doing it.
We'll just send him and Trump on a rocket to Mars.
Yeah. Perhaps, Space's first manned mission to Mars. It's Trump and us together.
This episode was absolutely dogged with technical errors, dogs barking, and all sorts. So apologies that I didn't get to say thank you to John at the end of it. So John, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you. I appreciate your time and all the words of wisdom and encouragement that you've given to everyone. And I hope people enjoyed this episode. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Get a Shift On.